Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, for joining me again, Doppler Dale, with your latest Tropical Storm Isaac update. For those of you joining live, it's just after 8:32 this evening. Let me check my sound here. One sec. It should have sound going there. I'm just checking it. Looks like I got sound going. Mic check 1 2 3 4 5. Mic check. Mic check. Looks like we should have sound going. Let me verify that. Looks all good. So let's go ahead and attempt to go with that one more time. And I'll flip over back to the satellite to give you an idea of what's going on there. Now we're taking a look at Isaac this evening, just shortly after 8:30 Central Daylight Time on Saturday the 25th. This is going to be recorded as well. For those of you who may not have been able to join live, you can still catch the very latest update. I have updated the forecast, so that's going to be the big news here in this update. I've changed the forecast from what we've been going with for the last couple of days and from earlier this afternoon. Taking a look at the satellite there, you can see the center kind of ragged there off of the north coast of Cuba. Convection has been relatively limited until recently, and you can see the dark red starting to explode near the north side now of the circulation center and also over portions of eastern Cuba. And I do anticipate we'll see more convection. The center of circulation is over the waters now and will remain over water, hugging along the coast, though, of northern portions of Cuba there. So there will be some interaction with the large-scale part of the system, but the actual center of circulation itself now will be free of land and will not be really hindered with any type of land masses until it gets to the Keys, and those are relatively small. So at this point, we should gradually start to see a slow strengthening of Tropical Storm Isaac. As of 7 p.m. Central Daylight Time, Isaac's center was about 375 miles east-southeast of Key West in the Florida Keys. Maximum sustained winds are at 60 miles per hour. The pressure, which had come up overnight as it crossed in Haiti and was slowly now beginning to fall again at 997 millibars, and the general movement is to the northwest at 310 degrees at 20 miles per hour. So that's still a relatively decent and fast clip. We are starting to see already impacts into portions of Florida. This is the Key West radar loop, and you can see plenty of rainfall there moving from the east towards the west, towards the Keys. Yet another band that has already pushed through the Keys, and some activity has also pushed through Miami and now pushing through the Everglades on its way over towards Naples, Fort Myers, possibly by morning hours. And we'll be watching the Key West radar through the day tomorrow, as we will be able to start to see the system approaching, and we are going to likely see a hurricane arriving at Key West later tomorrow evening. Let's go ahead and flip on over to the big picture. And there is the satellite picture that is most recent. This is the enhanced IR, almost to give you kind of a look of a visible. You can see definitely more convection starting to blossom. That's at brighter whites there just on the north side of the circulation. And really, I think the circulations wobble a little further north. You can kind of see some drier air intrusion right there and a comma head. So we're starting to redevelop that center of circulation. It's over the water. It's going to remain over the water. It's going to head up off towards the Florida Keys as we head through the overnight tonight and into tomorrow evening. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put on here the official Hurricane Center track. This is the latest track from the National Hurricane Center. And then I'll show you the forecast track that I've come up with based on some of the latest information and some thoughts from earlier today, and just being kind of deciding to finally go with it. You can see that track continuing off basically to the northwest into the Florida Keys, then gradually beginning a turn more northwest to north and taking it on up into the panhandle of Florida, keeping it off just to the west of Panama City. Now this is the official NHC track. This has been kind of the track they've been going with now for over 24 hours with just minor modifications, and they do strengthen it to a Category 2 hurricane. Let me go ahead and I'm going to post on my forecast that I've put together here for you. And there's the track. I'm going to go ahead and put on all the different icons for you to give timings of locations of when this will be arriving into certain locales. There we go. So by 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, I anticipate still a tropical storm, Isaac. Winds likely 60 to 65 miles per hour. I don't anticipate a whole lot of intensification overnight tonight. I expect mainly just the system to try to regenerate itself. It is fighting a secondary area of low pressure, a very weak area of low pressure. I can try to show you that on the satellite from the first of the loop. You can kind of see just a little bit of spin out here near Grand Cayman, just off to the northwest of Grand Cayman there. This area of low pressure could help to eventually direct Isaac a little bit more westerly, so it may try to get a little bit closer to this far northern coastline of Cuba as we head through tomorrow. But for the most part, I think it's just going to actually envelop this area of low and dissolve it on into the main Isaac circulation itself. And so as long as that little bit of energy is down there, there is a little bit of shear that is going to keep Isaac from really being able to fully develop. But again, give it another 12 to 24 hours and things will start to finally really bump up on Isaac as we head into tomorrow evening and continuing on into Monday. Let me go back to the track again. As of now, I do anticipate winds right at the borderline tropical storm to hurricane force. That's around 74 miles an hour. So between 70 and 75 miles an hour tomorrow evening. And all the times you're going to see here listed, those are Eastern Daylight Times. So at 8 p.m. Sunday, I'm anticipating basically Isaac Center to get real close to Key West there, passing overhead. And again, it's either going to be a very strong tropical storm or a minimal hurricane as it passes into Key West. This is about the time it should be phasing into the phase of becoming a hurricane itself. Continuing off to the northwest on into Monday, it's going to stay well off the coast. You can see Tampa over here. I'll go ahead and put this back on full screen for a bit. So it should still be, by Monday evening, it's likely to be approximately 190 to 200 miles off the shore of Tampa. But because of these tracks and because of the uncertainty that has been involved in them, I just took a look at a few things. I'm a big cruiser, love to go out on those cruise ships, and they are closing the port of Miami this evening, and they are closing early tomorrow morning at Tampa Bay, and that's impacting some cruise ships. They're having to stay out to sea an extra couple days, relocate. The Carnival Legend, for example, is supposed to be heading into Tampa Bay tomorrow and dropping off and then picking back up and heading back out. But because of the closure, they don't know when they're going to reopen the port. It's actually going to go to Port Canaveral, which is on the east side of the state, about 2.5 hours to the northeast of Tampa. So they're actually going to bus the folks back from Port Canaveral to Tampa to get their cars and pick up the people that are supposed to leave from Tampa, bus them over to Port Canaveral and get the ship, and eventually the ship will then return next week back into Tampa. So this is already impacting some commerce in the way of the cruise ships, and I'm sure other cruise lines are doing the same type of redirecting based on the closures of two of the major ports there. Anyway, by 8 p.m. Monday evening, it's well off the coast. It's close enough that, yes, there could be some potential for some storminess with some embedded tornadoes being on the right side, east side of the storm system there across the extreme eastern portions of Florida from Tampa, Sarasota, down to Sanibel Island, Fort Myers. But as the system continues to lift to the northwest, the chances will become less and less. But through the afternoon Monday and into Monday evening, there will be that threat for those of you on the west side of Florida. I anticipate Isaac becoming a Category 2 hurricane during the afternoon and evening hours on Monday as it goes over the warm waters that we've been talking about the last couple of days. And by the time it gets into Tuesday morning on its track, continuing off to the northwest, I expect that it will likely be pushing 110 mile-an-hour winds. 111 officially makes it a Category 3 hurricane, so it's going to be right at that border. I had been going just below Category 3 stages, but at this point, looking at some of the latest information, I'm going to go ahead and believe that at least for a brief period of time, Isaac will have winds that will reach into Category 3 strength. and that would make it officially a major hurricane. Anything that makes categories 3, 4, or 5 is classified as a major hurricane, and I do anticipate that it will have that opportunity to do so. As it tracks then through the day Tuesday, it'll begin to finally turn off a little bit more towards the north based on the ridge that will be off to the northeast of the system, and that will finally begin to take an effect. Yesterday I talked about a weak trough or front moving out of the plains into the southeast. That may have helped pick up Isaac a little bit quicker. Also has shunted it a little bit further to the east, which would have helped push it more Panama City to Tallahassee and into the Big Bend there of the Panhandle of Florida. But now looking at things from earlier today and into this evening, I just don't think there's going to be much of an impact at all with that trough, with that front. And as a result, I think it's going to have a more northwesterly track for a longer period of time. And that means now looking like the area is going to be around Dauphin Island in Alabama, crossing there and heading up into Mobile. Because of this track, if this would be exactly right, that would definitely send those storm surge right up Mobile Bay, which would not be good. And it would have winds probably in the range of around 100 miles an hour. Now that would be a Category 2 hurricane at landfall. I do anticipate that even though the storm may be a strong Category 2 to a lower end Category 3 earlier in the day Tuesday, as it approaches the coast into Tuesday evening, it will begin to weaken some with the interaction of the outer bands on the land surface and the cooler water temperatures, and with respect to what was out in the central portions of the Gulf of Mexico. And that should help at least weaken it some as it approaches inland. And unfortunately right now I'd have Mobile taking a direct hit probably around 8 o'clock Wednesday East Coast time, local time in Mobile. That would be 7 a.m. And then that would continue to track on up along up near Tuscaloosa as a tropical storm, weakening and becoming then just a tropical depression, and then heading on up into Tennessee and then eventually Kentucky. And that would definitely, with this track, put most of Alabama under the potential on Thursday for seeing some isolated tornadoes, although the chances would become less as the system would weaken. But it would also mean some substantial rainfall possible for much of the state of Alabama. For those of you down along the Gulf Coast, take it about 50 miles to 75 miles, especially on the east side of the circulation center. That would take you out into portions of the Panhandle of Florida. You can probably expect, with landfall, 12 to 18 inches of rainfall possible with that. So some of the areas that saw some very heavy rain earlier this summer and some flash flooding as a result there in Pensacola, unfortunately you could be seeing and dealing with that once again. Again, that's officially my forecast. That is not the National Hurricane Center's forecast at this time. I'll put their forecast back on there just to give you an idea of, again, the difference in the opinions. Things are pretty close right on up through the Keys, but then we start to differ as we head on into Monday evening and then have pushed things off to the west. Now, I will say there is some support now in theory to pushing this off further towards the west and towards Mobile at this time. I'm going to go ahead and put on here a couple other tracks real quick for you that were from model runs this morning and this afternoon. This yellow has been the one that was most consistent all along. This is the European model. It now follows very similar to the Hurricane Center. It has come, now this run was from earlier this morning. The evening run won't be available until early tomorrow morning, and I'll get a chance to look at that after I wake up in the morning. But it has definitely gone further towards the east, while every other model now almost is pushing off towards the west, including the Canadian model, which had been the furthest east, the American GFS, which in the pink was this morning's run, the purple, that is the afternoon run, even further towards the west, actually takes it into New Orleans. And then the light blue color in there, that light blue is the Navy's model, and the green line, that is the Canadian model. So they have all now gone west with this, and that started to make me think that there was that definite potential. And we had started to see a little bit of indications of that yesterday. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to also just let you see real quickly here the very latest modeling data from this evening that has now come in. And again, they're now pushing further west. In fact, you can see several of the models now going even further west than my current track that I do have in place. So that is the very latest regards with that. If you'd like to just look at some of the other data real quick, I'll go ahead and do that. If you are wondering how choppy it is out there, waves now are getting near 20 feet. And the forecast for that is it's going to be a rough go for some time, as the waves are going to be increasing right on up the east side of Florida. So those cruise ships I was talking about earlier, they're going to have a rough go heading on into those eastern Florida ports. But look at that, across the Gulf of Mexico, wave heights that could be pushing 30 to 40 feet. And then that water heading on up towards Mobile Bay. So there could be some significant storm surge flooding that we will be dealing with this storm system. And a last look here at the radar out of Cuba. It's not very easy to define the area's central circulation yet, but we'll be watching that through the evening hours as well. Again, I will do an update probably tomorrow late morning, early afternoon in a blog post, so please check that out and follow it on the Facebook page and Twitter. You'll get that update when that is available. And we'll go ahead and plan an 8:30 tomorrow evening live video again, 8:30 Central Time. About that time, we should be seeing the center of circulation approaching Key West and either already a hurricane or becoming a hurricane, at least based on tonight's current forecast. Thanks so much for joining once again. And if you have any questions, feel free to message them to me in the chat here on the video page. I'll be following that for a while, or over at Twitter or Facebook. Good evening.